Hi everyone, it's me, Beaticali Sunflower. So I thought I'd hop on today and do the hashtag 10 decks, 10 tarot tubers. It's a video response to Nova Monday, and it was kind of like a mashup of several hashtags. And the aim of this hashtag is to kind of like assign decks who you feel reflect tarot tubers. So these are in no particular order, so let's crack on. The first deck that I want to show you is called the Painted Tarot by Sophie McKay-Knight. And the tarot tuber that I've assigned to this deck is Amethyst Ascension. I find it to be very creative. I mean, this deck here is more about actual hand-painted art. But I just see Rochelle as being very creative. She makes quite a lot of decks, you know, even like her witchy room, and just her decor in general is very creative. I'm not sure whether she actually does hand-drawn art, but I think creativity and being artistic can extend quite a bit. So this deck is Rider-Waite-Smith inspired. It's an indie UK produced deck. I haven't used this deck for quite a while actually. I do tend to use it if I'm trying to decide on things creatively. I see Rochelle as a creative person, and this deck basically to me reflects Rochelle. So the next deck is called the Everyday Enchantment, I should say, Tarot by Poppy Pallen. Let me just take the cards out. So this deck reminds me of old London, kind of like 1970s London. And that was London that I grew up in. People looked out for each other, they integrated, and there was a good sense of community. So the tarot tuber that I've chosen for this deck is Antoinette, or Tony as I like to call her, and her YouTube channel is called Antoinette Tarot and Jewelry. And the reason why I kind of associate this deck with with Tony, is because even though she doesn't live in London no more, I think she's originally from Islington, which is where I spent my formative years as a child. And we also have like similar tastes in decks as well. So she kind of reminds me of a bit of myself. I'm talking not visually, but I'm talking about kind of like tarot wise, and obviously where we were born and where I was raised for my formative years. And because this deck reminds me of my early years, or my formative years in London, I kind of relate this deck to Tony. It's a beautiful deck. So this next deck is called the Shrine of the Black Medusa. So this deck reminds me of Leanne. I think her tarot tube channel was called Leanne Smith. So I kind of remember when tarot tube went through a phase of supporting black creators, and I remember Leanne showcasing this deck in support of the creator. In addition, I always kind of like associate Leanne's deck taste as kind of like FOF decks, and this deck here is kind of like FOF inspired in my opinion. And I think even the creator as well, she kind of says it's a FOF deck, I think in either the Little White Book or something like that, but she does say that it is FOF inspired. Leanne kind of mentioned me in a recent video, and she said that my channel was the first channel that she watched on tarot tube. I was completely shocked. She made me feel extremely privileged. And this deck here was actually my first FOF inspired deck as well. So this is why I kind of linked this deck to Leanne, because I remember her supporting this deck, or the creator, and showcasing this deck on Tarot Tube. This is my first FOF deck, and I kind of associate Leanne as a FOF deck. She might not be, but that's how I associate her. Every time I kind of use this deck, I kind of always think of Leanne for some reason. It's a beautiful deck. So the next deck is called A Boss a Day's Lenormand Study Deck. This deck was created for me by the lovely Masha. I think her channel is called Masha Muslins, or Muslins by Masha. I will put her channel in the description bar. Oops, a daisy. But Masha tends to kind of like have a lot of historical type of Marseille decks. But Masha did do a series on her channel on Lenormand. And she actually made this deck for me as a study deck. So this is why I kind of like associate this deck with Masha. You know, I think that was her dog. You know, it's actually a playing card deck, so she used the playing card associations and then added the Lenormand kind of symbol to the deck. So every time I pick up this deck, because it was actually designed for me and it's got my emojis on there, I always think of Masha when I read with this deck. So this deck is called Cats Rule the Earth Tarot. Let's take out the cards. So the tarot tuber that I associate this deck with is Martin, and his channel is, I think it's Martin Muslins. Martin gifted me this deck actually about almost 4 years ago in 2022, and this deck reminds me of Martin a lot because, number one, Martin is a lover of cats. Cats tend to do a lot of grooming, don't they? They groom themselves and they're kind of very self-aware, and I find Martin to be an extremely nice, trendy person who takes care of himself. I also find, like cats, Martin to be kind of like nurturing and healing. Cats also sense illness, and Martin has given me a lot of tips over the years on, you know, like herbal remedies to complement my Western medicine remedies for conditions that I have. He also made me this doll about 3 years ago. Look, he handmade that doll, customized it. Look, she's even got like woolly sort of hair. And he took his time with this. I think he stuffed her with herbs from his garden and stuff like that. And it took him quite a while to handmake this doll for me. And he gifted me this doll as well when I wasn't feeling very well 3 years ago. And then the sepia tones of this deck, to me, are kind of earthy. And I also find Martin quite a down-to-earth, grounded, earthy person. So the cats, the earthiness, this remind me a lot of Martin. So this next deck is called the Visionary Path Tarot by Lucy Delicis, I think that is. And the tarot tuber that this deck reminds me of is actually Nova. So the creator of this tag. I see this deck as very purple, like the backs are purple, and it's got like purple edges with yellow, which to me, yellow is one of my favourite colours, and yellow really is warming and it stands out, and then black and white. For me, I see those colours as confidence, but that is my own interpretation. I've never seen Nova before because her channel always shows her with the camera down, so I don't know what she looks like, but I always feel that she's quite exotic. I just see purple around her, and purple to me is all about wisdom and spirituality. Nova's always talking about her holistic practices, and she seems to be deeply spiritual. Purple also kind of like reminds me of creativity and imagination, and Nova's created quite a lot of hashtags. She seems to have a lot of knowledge in tarot and stuff like that. And I also see purple as connected to mystery and magic, and I think Nova practices that as well, even though she's never actually said that. So this deck is kind of like psychedelic, and it's just like a very kind of like exotic kind of spiritual deck. It gives a lot of predictive readings, in my opinion, and it reminds me of Nova, even though I've never seen her, seen her before. The energy of this deck reminds me of the energy that Nova gives out in her videos. So the next deck is called the Spill Tarot. This is a UK or London actually based tarot deck. It's a photography deck. It is made by several artists, and it's based on a festival. And the person that I've chosen for this deck is Practical Mystic Carol. So to me, Carol is very academic and very spiritual. You know, she does a lot of videos on tarot, you know, numerology, history of tarot, astrology, and all that sort of stuff. Her videos are very academic. And this deck was a deck that I had to work through to be able to read through it. I didn't get it straight away. It was a deck that needed a lot of work, research, care and attention to be able to read. In addition as well, this deck is London based, and I think Carol is originally Canadian, but she uses quite a lot of London terminologies or English terminologies to me. So she kind of reminds me of England in a way. Why I don't know. And this deck, it was, as I said before, was created by a lot of artists, and Carol to me is also quite arty. I remember many years ago when she would devise this kind of like junk journal. I think she gifted it to Rochelle from Amethyst Ascension. I think she won the raffle for it, but it was a very kind of intricate, kind of very arty type of journal. So that to me suggests that Carol also might be quite arty as well as spiritual. So I think that this deck kind of maps her to me, you know. It's quite a deep deck, so it needs like a lot of study. Well, it took me a lot of study to be able to read it without a guidebook. It's artistic. And it's a tarot deck, it's spiritual. So this is the Spill Tarot. So this next deck is called the Healing Tarot. 78 Ways to Wellness. This is a Schiffer deck. So this deck's a black and white deck, very plain, very grounding. I love the backs of the decks, red. And the guidebook kind of like gives you health meanings for the cards, so it's like a health deck. This deck reminds me of Julia from the Highly Sensitive Tarot. It's the voice, yeah. Her voice is very soothing, very calm. Yeah, I think she'd be like a very good narrator for audiobooks. She's got that sort of voice. And I tend to watch her videos or listen to her videos a lot when I'm having like flare-ups. She's just soothing. Her voice actually is mesmerizing and kind of healing. And because this is a healing deck, I just associate this deck with Julia. It's also quite plain, no fuss. But, you know, it's got like a lot of health meanings in it. So it gives you like the astrological signs, the upright health meaning, the reverse health meaning. Calm, soothing deck that kind of aids my health. The next tarot deck is a major Oni tarot, and it's called the Blissful Dream Doll Tarot. And this deck I associate with Julie from Peekaboo Rose. So like myself, Julie is a doll collector. She plays with dolls, collects dolls. This deck is more, I'd say, Barbie inspired. I'm not sure if Julie plays with Barbies. I know she likes Blythe dolls, Rainbow High dolls and stuff like that, and ball jointed dolls. I'm not sure if she's got Barbies, but just the fact that it's a doll deck and it's pink, because I also associate the colour pink with Julie for some reason. I don't know why, but I always see you as pink. This deck reminds me of her a lot. Just beautiful dolls. And Julie also created some doll-inspired Jasmine Beckett Smith tarot decks. So I do associate her with both tarot and dolls. And the final tarot deck. I can never pronounce this deck, but this is called the Phantasmagoric, I think, Theatre Tarot. This is a surreal art tarot deck. I'm not sure if it's in print, but it's a mass market. Well, it was a mass market deck. And this deck reminds me of Mystic MZ. Because to me, this has got like a lot of surreal art in there. And MZ is really into surreal art. She's actually introduced me to a few more surreal art decks. But I bought this deck years ago, long before I knew about MZ's channel. And when I do pick it up and play this deck, I always think about MZ. Found her to be very interesting, kind of quirky. But this deck just matches, to me, her love for surreal art. And it just reminds me of her a lot. So thank you so much, Nova, for devising this hashtag. I will leave links in the description bar for the decks that I showcased if they're available. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.